Chapter 16. Efren was glad to reach home, even if it was so late. All Efren wanted was to get some rest, but first they needed to stop by Adela's apartment across the street and pick up the twins. Appa tried to pay her, but she wouldn't have it, saying all she wanted was for Amma to make it back soon. Max and Mia had fallen asleep on the couch while watching SpongeBob reruns. Appa bent down and scooped up Max while Efren leaned in and picked up Mia. Even with her light frame, she began to weigh on Efren's arms by the time they made it across the street. Appa reached down and took her over his shoulder as well. Determined to help, Efren rushed up the stairway and held the door open for Appa, who now strained with the weight of a twin on each shoulder. Max looked up and winked at Efren, who followed closely behind. Efren broke out laughing and winked back at Max. Once inside, Appa lowered the little ones onto the mattress with the same care Amma always did. Even kissed the same spots on their foreheads. To think sometime tomorrow the coyote Lalo found would be returning Amma home where she belonged. Efren could almost feel her kisses pressing against his head again. Too exhausted to undress, he kicked his shoes off and tucked himself between his brother and sister. "Good night, Appa," Efren said mid-yawn. "Buenas noches," he said as he turned out the light. Efren shifted, trying to avoid the annoying ray of moonlight that somehow always managed to seep in through the cracked window blind. Even with little light, he could see Appa lying down on the mattress beside him, pulling up the covers and blessing himself. A thought raced through Efren's mind. "Appa? Yes, mijo? You think we could go to Mass tomorrow with you?" Appa tried to laugh to himself. "Funny, I was just thinking the same thing. It's the least we can do to give thanks. Now get some rest. You earned it." Minutes later, just as Efren's mind began to doze off, he felt a chubby foot poking the side of his face. But after everything he'd just experienced, he didn't mind anymore. The next morning, a noise in the kitchen woke Efren. He lifted his head and wiped his eyes. Amma? For a split second, he thought she'd somehow returned, but his mind immediately set him straight. It was just Appa standing over the kitchen sink. Sunday mornings were usually the only day of the week when Appa got to sleep in while the rest of the family attended 8 o'clock Mass. It wasn't due to a lack of faith, though. No, Appa was very religious. He was just tired, a lack of sleep from the long hours he worked, but not today. Efren gently lifted Max's leg off him and headed to the kitchen. "Appa, ¿qué estás haciendo?" he whispered. "Estoy limpiando." Max paused to think. Appa was right. The place was a mess. There was no way he could have her come home to this, not after all she'd been through. He might not have been able to form steaming sopes with his bare hands, but he was able to clean a kitchen with the same speed and precision as Amma. "It'll go faster if I help," Efren said. Appa shot him a smile before tossing him a cleaning rag. Cleaning up such a tiny kitchen didn't take long, not with Max and Mia asleep instead of running around trying to help. Efren put the last plate in the cabinet as the phone rang. Not waiting for a second ring, Appa just about flew to the phone. "Si, bueno?" The moment was at hand. Efren leaned in closer, trying to listen. "Is it her?" Appa nodded, still listening attentively. The words coming over the phone were muffled, but the excitement behind them was clear as day. Efren crossed himself and rested his head on his pressed hands. Suddenly, Appa's entire face lit up, and Efren knew the news was good. "Ya cruzó!" He put the phone aside and shouted. "She crossed! She's in San Diego, on her way home!" A sense of joy surged throughout every inch of Efren's body. He ran up to Max and Mia. "Wake up, Amma's coming home, today!" Never before had Max gotten out of bed so quickly. "Amma?" Tears flowed down his round cheeks as he jumped up and bear-hugged Efren, who in turn picked him up and squeezed him before spinning him around. "Are you sure?" Mia's soft voice asked. Efren lowered his little brother and knelt beside her. "See, Mia, I promise, this time it's for real." A smile, a very special smile, now filled her face. "Amma's coming home." This time it was Appa shouting at the top of his lungs, "She's coming home." And with that, Max catapulted himself onto the mattress and did the most spectacular flip anyone had ever seen him do. Appa and Efren looked at each other and shared a nod. Before long, the entire family was jumping on the mattresses, including Appa. Max and Mia paraded around the room in their freshly ironed Sunday best. Appa stood back looking bothered. Efren glanced at the crooked creases down Max's pant legs. "They're not so bad. It's not like you burned them." Mia spun and swirled in the lace skirt of her dress. "I think my dress looks beautiful." "Yes, it does, mija," said Appa. "Bien bonito, but a bit short. You better put some shorts on underneath." Appa turned to Max's snug-fitting pants. "Ay, mira no más. My little muffin boy. He tried squeezing a finger into the waistband, but when that didn't work, he simply rubbed his chin, thinking. Efren took a closer look. Ma usually moves the button or sews in more fabric. More milagros. Well, how about this? He went into the kitchen and pulled out the Velcro kit Ma sometimes used to hold up picture frames. He undid Max's front button and secured the Velcro along the front. There, no one will ever know, he said, giving Max a gentle pat on the rear. Efren pointed to the clock on the microwave. Apa, we'd better hurry. Apa checked his watch. Okay, mijos, why don't the two of you go brush your teeth and do your hair while Efren and I stack the mattresses and make this place look nice for your ama. And Max, he turned right to him, just a little moco de gorilla gel in your hair. Max smiled and shook his head hard as if it were a rattle. Apa looked on with a crumpled forehead as the pair raced into the bathroom. Efren knew that look well. What's wrong? Nothing. Apa? He tilted his head and gave him a look. It's just, Apa sighed, you guys deserve so much more than this. Pobrecitos, their clothes barely fit, and you? I'm sorry, mijo. Efren looked down at his own yellowing polo shirt and patched up navy blue pants. Sorry for what? He asked. Apa glared down at the mattresses on the floor. For all of this, he said, gesturing around to the entire apartment. For failing you and your hermanitos. You guys shouldn't be living this way. A kid like you should have his own room. His eyes panned down to the mattresses on the floor before giving the nearest one a good hard kick, or at the very least an actual bed. Pa, beds are overrated. I don't need a bunch of fancy stuff to be happy. I've got my family. Well, by tonight I will. And that's more than a lot of people have. Trust me. You are an amazing kid. You know that, right? Efren grinned from ear to ear. I just tried to copy you and Ama. Mass felt a bit more special than usual. Before it even started, Pa knelt down, locked his hands tightly, and shut his eyes. Without missing a beat, Max and Mia kneeled down alongside Efren, no doubt praying for the same thing. At the end of Mass, Father Octavo announced the pancake fundraiser happening in the courtyard. Once there, Pa pulled out a few dollar bills from his wallet and counted to himself. It was all he had left after donating the rest during Mass. Pa ordered 2 meals, making a total of 6 pancakes, 4 strips of bacon, 4 sausages, and a pile of scrambled eggs to share. After watching Max gobble up everyone's leftovers, the family walked back home. All Efren could think of was getting ready for Ama's return. There was so much to do. First was picking the best roses from the apartment building's flower bed. Efren, Max, and Mia each picked different colored roses. Efren stuck to pink, while Mia and Max went for any shade they could reach. They stopped by the fruit trees for a few treats to take home and made a quick stop at the 99-cent store. Using a pocket full of laundry quarters, Efren bought 2 welcome home balloons for Ama, which of course both Max and Mia wanted to carry back to the apartment. The balloons drew the attention of the entire neighborhood. Everyone they passed stopped to ask if Ama was coming back. En serio? Ay, que bueno. The cries of support were everywhere. Soon every woman Efren had ever seen at the laundromat stopped by the apartment with a welcoming dish in hand. Fried taquitos, tostadas, elotes, mole, enchiladas, flan, carrot cake, you name it, it was there. Efren couldn't believe how many people they'd actually managed to cram into the apartment. It seemed everyone wanted to be there when Ama came back. But as the time passed, the worry started. No se preocupen de nada, ese tráfico es maldito, said Don Ricardo with a smudge of guacamole at the edge of his mustache. And he was right, the I-5 was horrible. Ama was probably just stuck in traffic. But soon 1 o'clock gave way to 2 o'clock, and when the food had gone cold, people began running out of excuses, especially Efren. By 4 o'clock, the apartment had emptied of all the guests. Efren couldn't handle the thought of any bad news and avoided looking in Apa's direction, choosing instead to stare at the mostly untouched food that covered Ama's entire kitchen counter. Finally, the phone rang. Apa rushed over to answer, followed closely by Max and Mia. Efren studied Apa's face for any sign of good news, but what he saw instead was his father's face fall, his shoulders sink, and his eyes close. The news was bad, very bad.